My best friend refused to come home from vacation after her daughter attempted suicide, then accused me of kidnapping her for taking her daughter in. When I confronted her, she scoffed and said she did it for attention. I just stared at her. That was 6 months ago. This morning, she was crying outside a courtroom she wasn't allowed in. My best friend Claire had always dreamed of being a mother. Ever since we were teenagers, she'd constantly talk about what kind of mom she'd be and how many kids she'd have. So when Julia was born, Claire was over the moon, and I was just as happy. I'd never seen her glow so bright. Our daughters, Julia and my Emma, grew up together like sisters, spending weekends and holidays at each other's houses. Fast forward 15 years, Claire asked if I could watch Julia for a week while she took a solo vacation to Bali. It wasn't unusual. Claire liked her breaks, and Julia practically lived at my house anyway. The first 2 days were fine, typical teen stuff, Netflix marathons, junk food, all of that. But on day 3, things took a turn. At dinner, I called Julia down from her room, but she didn't answer. Emma said she hadn't seen Julia since lunch, and a weird feeling settled in my stomach. I walked upstairs, knocked on her door, but got nothing. I tried opening the door, but it was locked. Julia never locked her door. Something was off. I grabbed the key from the hallway drawer and opened the door, my heart pounding. Julia was lying on her bed, barely breathing, surrounded by empty med bottles and a folded note. My vision blurred as I dialed 911. Emma stood frozen behind me, crying, asking what was happening, but I couldn't find the words. Everything happened fast. The ambulance arrived, and I was answering questions from EMTs while frantically texting a neighbor to watch Emma. On the ambulance ride, I called Claire. She was still at the resort. Through choking sobs, I told her what happened, but instead of sounding even remotely worried, Claire hesitated, then said, "Is it really that serious? Maybe she just wanted attention." I felt my stomach drop. My head spun in disbelief. At the hospital, the doctor explained Julia needed her stomach pumped. I texted Claire immediately. Surely now she'd realize how serious it was. But Claire's next message knocked the wind out of me. Changing flights is $200. It's expensive. Plus, you don't have to go to the hospital every day. That's literally what nurses are for. I stared at my phone, my blood boiling. I wanted to scream, but I knew Julia needed me more than Claire's drama right now. I took off work, used my vacation days, and spent 3 straight nights in the hospital chair beside Julia's bed. One night, she told me she thought Claire didn't love her anymore. She asked why her mom wasn't coming back for her. I didn't know how to respond. I just hugged her, feeling a wave of anger in my chest. Throughout all this, I sent Claire constant updates, photos, and texts, but each response I got back was shorter, colder. Meanwhile, she posted beach selfies, captioning, "Living my best life." It hit me then that the Claire I knew, the devoted mom she always claimed to be, had completely vanished. When Julia was discharged, I prepared a safe, comforting room for her at my place. I tried countless times to talk to Claire about the situation, but she brushed it off every time. Claire finally showed up at my house, a full day after landing, deeply tanned and relaxed. She gave Julia an awkward half-hug, then immediately asked about the luggage she'd left before vacation. As I explained Julia's recovery plan, Claire's eyes darkened, her jaw tightening with every word. Suddenly, Claire snapped. She stood up, accusing me of parenting her child behind her back. Her voice got louder, and she started shouting about me overstepping boundaries and blowing things out of proportion. "It was probably just for attention," she spat. That's when I heard a choked sob from the hallway. Julia stood frozen, tears streaming down her cheeks. Claire barely glanced at her daughter. My heart pounded. "Are you kidding me?" I shouted. I yelled at Claire that she chose the beach over her dying daughter, but Claire just scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Teens are dramatic. You should have known better." That was it. I snapped and unloaded everything. I told her she was selfish, that she'd consistently put herself first, that Julia's life was apparently only worth $200 to her. Claire's voice lowered, venomous and cold. "You don't understand what it's like needing a break from your kids." At that exact moment, something between us shattered completely. I saw who Claire really was, and I knew instantly our friendship was beyond repair. Claire grabbed Julia's bag and demanded she leave, but Julia locked herself in my bathroom, sobbing uncontrollably, refusing to go. And that's when Claire lost it. She began yelling, accusing me of kidnapping her daughter, and before I knew it, her phone was out, and she was calling the police. "Go ahead," I said. "Call them. Let's see what they think about a mother who wouldn't interrupt her vacation when her daughter attempted suicide." That only made Claire angrier. She stormed out and came back 20 minutes later with 2 police officers. She was actually claiming I was kidnapping her daughter. The officers looked uncomfortable when they realized the situation. I showed them Julia's discharge papers and tried to explain about the suicide attempt. Claire interrupted constantly, spinning some tale about me being obsessed with her daughter and trying to replace her as Julia's mother. "Ma'am, where is the minor now?" one officer asked. "She locked herself in the bathroom because she's afraid to go with her mother," I explained. The female officer asked if she could try talking to Julia. She knocked gently on the bathroom door. "Julia, I'm Officer Martinez. Can we talk for a minute?" After some coaxing, Julia unlocked the door. She looked terrible, red-faced and trembling. The moment she emerged, Claire started in on her. "Julia, stop this ridiculous behavior right now. You're causing a scene for no reason." The officers exchanged glances. The female officer suggested they talk to Julia privately. Claire objected, but the male officer firmly told her they needed to hear from Julia directly. While they were talking, Claire paced the hallway, loudly complaining about me poisoning her daughter against her. Emma, who'd been sitting quietly in the waiting area, started recording Claire on her phone without anyone noticing. After about 15 minutes, the officers returned with Julia. Officer Martinez said, "This seems beyond our jurisdiction. This is a family matter that needs professional intervention." She made a call, and a CPS worker named Ms. Thompson arrived about an hour later. Ms. Thompson interviewed Julia privately, while Claire continued her tirade about me in the hallway. When Ms. Thompson finished talking with Julia, she suggested that Julia stay somewhere she felt safe for 72 hours, while proper evaluations could be conducted. Claire looked like she might explode, but apparently realized making another scene in front of CPS wouldn't help her case. Fine, 72 hours. But I want to get some of her things from the guest room. I didn't trust Claire to be alone anywhere near Julia, so I went with her to collect Julia's belongings from my house. As soon as we were upstairs, Claire turned on me. You think you've won? I'm going to destroy your life for this. Julia is my daughter, not yours. I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of person you really are. What Claire didn't know was that Emma had followed us upstairs and was recording from the hallway. On the recording, you can clearly hear Claire say, "I don't even want to deal with a moody teenager. Do you think I enjoy this?" When Claire left, she slammed every door she could find and peeled out of our driveway fast enough to leave tire marks. Her parting words were that she'd be back with real authorities who would take her side. I called my sister immediately. She's a family attorney, and I needed advice ASAP. She told me to document everything, every text, every interaction, every witness. Start a journal, save screenshots, record dates, and times of everything. That night, my phone blew up with messages from mutual friends. Claire had started posting on social media that I was mentally unstable and had kidnapped her daughter. Some friends were asking what was going on. Some were already taking Claire's side, and others were sending supportive messages. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had fallen apart. Just a week ago, Claire and I were planning our annual summer beach trip together. Now she was publicly accusing me of kidnapping, and I was hiding her daughter from her. The next morning, I took Julia to her scheduled therapy appointment. I was waiting in the reception area when Claire barged in, demanding to participate in the session. I'm her mother. I have every right to be there. The therapist, Dr. Chen, came out to the waiting room when she heard the commotion. She calmly asked to speak with Claire privately before making any decisions. Claire went with her, leaving me and Julia in the waiting room. "Are you okay?" I asked Julia. She looked down at her hands. "There's something I haven't told anyone," she whispered. "The reason I did what I did, I found messages on Mom's phone. She was texting her friend Leah about how much she resents being a mother, how she wishes she could just leave and never come back. My heart broke for her. Julia, I'm so sorry. I'm scared to tell the therapist or the CPS lady. What if they make me go to a foster home or something?" I took her hand. "You should tell Dr. Chen everything. The more she knows, the better she can help. And you always have a home with us, no matter what." About 20 minutes later, Dr. Chen emerged looking concerned. Claire stormed out behind her, yelling that Dr. Chen was biased and unprofessional. She didn't even look at Julia as she left. Dr. Chen asked to speak with both Julia and me. She recommended continued professional support for Julia and suggested it would be best if Julia remained in a stable, supportive environment, meaning our home, at least temporarily. Back at my house, we got a notice that Claire had filed for an emergency custody hearing. I started to panic, but then Ms. Thompson from CPS called. She explained that Dr. Chen had filed a report expressing serious concerns about Claire's parenting. The emergency hearing had been postponed pending a formal investigation. That should have been a relief, but it just marked the beginning of the battle. Claire started calling and texting Julia constantly, alternating between guilt trips, "I guess you don't love me anymore," and love bombing, "You're my whole world, baby girl." Then she'd switch to messages like, "Stop exaggerating what happened," and "You're making me look bad." Julia showed me all the messages, and I helped her block her mother's number while documenting everything for CPS. It broke my heart to see Julia having to protect herself from her own mother. News about the situation spread through our social circle. Most of our friends were supportive once they understood what had happened, but Claire managed to convince a few people that I was trying to steal her daughter. These friends started calling me and even showing up at my house to talk some sense into me. One afternoon, I decided to take the girls for ice cream, hoping to get away from the stress for a bit. In the parking lot of the ice cream shop, we ran into Claire's best friend, Megan. She immediately pulled out her phone and started filming us, yelling about parental alienation and how I was brainwashing Julia. I hustled the girls back to the car while they both cried. This is my life now, documenting everything, consulting with my sister about legal options, supporting Julia through her recovery, and trying to shield both girls from Claire's increasingly erratic behavior. The CPS investigation is ongoing, and Julia's school counselor has been calling me with concerns since Julia hasn't been attending. I keep asking myself how we got here. How did 15 years of friendship disintegrate so completely? And more importantly, how did I never see this side of Claire before? Was she always like this, and I just didn't notice? Or did something change? Whatever the case, I'm committed to being there for Julia for as long as she needs me. She deserves to feel safe and loved, and if Claire can't provide that, then I will. But I'm scared about what Claire might do next. She's already proven she'll go to extreme lengths, even calling the police with false accusations. What happens when the 72-hour period is up? What happens if the courts send Julia back to her? I'm trying to take it one day at a time, but the stress is overwhelming. Emma is worried about her friend. My husband is supportive but concerned about the legal implications, and I'm just trying to keep everything from falling apart completely. The CPS 72-hour cool-down period was almost up, and I was a nervous wreck about what would happen next. Julia hadn't slept through a single night without nightmares since her hospital stay. I'd hear her crying at 2 a.m. and find her sitting in the hallway between our bedroom and Emma's room, not wanting to wake anyone but too scared to be alone. My husband Rob was amazing through all this, making Julia's favorite pancakes in the mornings and helping both girls with homework to keep some sense of normalcy. The night before the 72 hours were up, Julia had the worst panic attack I'd ever seen. She couldn't breathe, her whole body was shaking, and she kept saying, "Please don't make me go back," over and over. After we finally got her calmed down and back to sleep with Emma keeping her company, Rob and I sat at our kitchen table feeling completely helpless. "What if they make her go back to Claire?" I whispered, not wanting the girls to overhear. "You saw her tonight. She's terrified." Rob squeezed my hand. "We'll figure something out. Your sister's coming tomorrow morning, right? She'll know what to do." My sister Natalie arrived at 7 a.m. sharp the next day, looking every bit the tough attorney in her navy pantsuit. She'd brought a stack of papers and her laptop, turning our dining room into a makeshift law office. She went through everything we documented so far and nodded approvingly. "You did good keeping records," she said, reviewing the screenshots of Claire's messages and Emma's recordings. "This will help, but I need to prepare you. Family court can be unpredictable. Biological parents get a lot of leeway." Ms. Thompson from CPS arrived at 9 a.m. for a follow-up assessment. She interviewed Julia again, then asked to speak with me and Rob. Her expression was serious but sympathetic. "Based on my preliminary investigation and Dr. Chen's report, I'm recommending temporary guardianship be granted to you while we complete a more thorough assessment," she told us. "However, Claire has hired an attorney who's fighting this hard. There's going to be a hearing tomorrow." I felt a wave of relief followed immediately by dread about facing Claire in court. As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text from Claire. "Hope you enjoyed playing mommy. See you in court tomorrow." The rest of the day was a blur of preparation. Natalie coached Julia on what to expect if the judge wanted to speak with her. Rob took Emma to his parents' house. We decided it was better if she wasn't around for the stress of the hearing. I could barely eat or sleep, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. The family court was smaller than I expected, more like a conference room than the dramatic courtrooms you see on TV. Claire was already there when we arrived, sitting beside a slick-looking attorney in an expensive suit. She didn't acknowledge us, just stared straight ahead with a slight smirk on her face. Julia gripped my hand so tight it hurt. I could feel her trembling next to me. Natalie kept a reassuring hand on her shoulder as we took our seats. The judge was an older woman named Judge Patel with reading glasses and a no-nonsense expression. She reviewed the case file for what felt like forever before addressing the room. "I've reviewed the reports from Child Protective Services and Dr. Chen, as well as the hospital records," she said. "I'd like to speak with Julia privately in my chambers." Claire's attorney immediately objected, claiming I had coached Julia. The judge overruled him and led Julia away. Those 15 minutes were the longest of my life. Claire kept glaring at me from across the room while her attorney whispered to her. When they returned, Julia looked drained but somehow calmer. Judge Patel adjusted her glasses and addressed the court. "Based on all evidence before me, including my conversation with Julia, I'm granting temporary guardianship to Mr. and Mrs. Reynolds for a period of 30 days, during which time a complete family assessment will be conducted." Claire gasped audibly. Her attorney started to object, but Judge Patel wasn't finished. "Mrs. Davis will have supervised visitation twice weekly at the Family Services Center. Additionally, I'm ordering Mrs. Davis to complete a psychological evaluation and attend parenting classes before the next hearing." Claire stood up, her face red. "This is ridiculous. She's my daughter." "Mrs. Davis, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt," Judge Patel warned. "This temporary arrangement is in your daughter's best interest until we can fully assess the situation." The look Claire gave me as we left the courtroom was pure hatred. She brushed past Julia without a word and stormed out, her attorney rushing after her. In the parking lot, Julia collapsed against me in tears, but they were tears of relief. "I don't have to go back," she kept saying. "I don't have to go back. Not for at least 30 days, Natalie clarified gently. "And hopefully not after that either. But we need to be prepared for a longer battle." She wasn't wrong. The 30-day temporary guardianship was just the beginning of what turned into a war. Claire missed her first 2 supervised visits, then showed up to the third one with a brand new attitude and expensive gifts for Julia. The supervisor's report noted that Claire seemed more interested in taking selfies with Julia to post online than actually connecting with her daughter. Then came the social media campaign. Claire posted daily about being a mother fighting to get her daughter back, and how I was a mentally unstable woman obsessed with her child. She twisted everything, claiming Julia's hospital stay was due to an accidental overdose, not a suicide attempt, and that I was exploiting a teenager's mistake to kidnap her. Some of our mutual friends actually believed her. Jessica, who I'd known for 10 years, texted me that I should stop the drama and give Claire her daughter back. Michael, another longtime friend, left a voicemail saying he was disappointed in me for coming between a mother and child. The worst part was the impact on Julia. She'd start to make progress in therapy, then see one of her mom's posts or hear about Claire's latest lies, and she'd spiral again. One night, she showed me a group chat where her former friends from Claire's neighborhood were calling her a liar and attention seeker. She was devastated. "Why doesn't she just let me go?" Julia sobbed. "If she doesn't even want me, why is she fighting so hard?" I didn't have a good answer. All I could do was hold her and promise we wouldn't give up. Emma was struggling too. She'd lost friends whose parents sided with Claire, and she was dealing with nasty comments at school. But she stayed fiercely loyal to Julia, even getting suspended for a day after confronting a kid who was spreading rumors about Julia's fake suicide attempt. 3 weeks into the temporary guardianship, Claire escalated things again. She showed up at Julia's therapy appointment, creating such a scene that security had to escort her out. That same day, someone keyed my car in the office parking lot with the word "thief" scratched into the driver's door. I couldn't prove it was Claire, but the timing wasn't exactly subtle. Rob was getting worried about security. He installed cameras around our house and changed the locks after Julia mentioned that Claire had a spare key from when she would house sit for us years ago. It felt paranoid, but necessary. The 30-day review hearing approached quickly. Ms. Thompson had completed her assessment and recommended extending my guardianship for at least 6 months. Dr. Chen provided a strong report about Julia's progress in therapy and the damage that would be done by forcing her to return to Claire's custody. We felt cautiously optimistic. Then, 2 days before the hearing, we were blindsided. Claire's attorney filed an emergency motion claiming Julia's father Mark wanted custody. This made no sense. Claire had always told us Mark abandoned them when Julia was a baby and wanted nothing to do with his daughter. Julia had never even met him. Natalie was furious. "This is a delay tactic," she explained. "They know they're losing, so they're throwing in a complication to buy time. The judge postponed the hearing by 2 weeks to investigate the father's claim. I was beside myself with frustration, but Natalie saw an opportunity. If Mark really is in the picture, maybe we should talk to him, she suggested. Claire's painted him as the villain for 15 years, but what if that's not the full story? Julia was hesitant but curious about the father she'd never known. With her permission, Natalie hired a private investigator who tracked down Mark Hansen in a town about 3 hours away. He was remarried with 2 young kids and worked as an architect. Nothing about him matched Claire's description of a deadbeat who abandoned his family. I was nervous about contacting him. What if he was terrible, or wanted nothing to do with Julia? But we needed to know the truth. Natalie called him first, explaining the situation professionally. To our surprise, Mark asked to video chat with all of us that same evening. When his face appeared on the screen, I was struck by how much Julia resembled him. Same green eyes, same chin. He looked nervous, but eager. "Julia," he said, his voice catching. "I can't believe it's really you." Julia was speechless, staring at the father she'd never met. I squeezed her shoulder supportively. Mark explained his side of the story, and it was nothing like what Claire had told us. He and Claire had dated in college, and she got pregnant unexpectedly. They tried making it work, but split up when Julia was 2. He paid child support and had regular visitation until Julia was 4. Then Claire got a job opportunity in our city and moved 200 miles away. She promised we'd work out a new visitation schedule, Mark explained. But then she started making excuses. Julia was sick, she had plans, the timing wasn't good. Eventually, she stopped answering my calls completely. He'd hired an attorney and fought for visitation, but Claire kept changing addresses and jobs. He sent birthday and Christmas gifts that were never acknowledged. When Julia was 7, he received a cease and desist letter from Claire's attorney claiming his harassment was causing Julia emotional distress. The letter said Julia was afraid of me and didn't want contact, Mark said, his voice breaking. I didn't want to traumatize my daughter, so I backed off. I kept paying child support through the state system, but Claire made it clear I wasn't welcome in Julia's life. He showed us a box of returned letters and cards he'd sent over the years. He'd kept track of Julia through distant mutual friends and social media, always hoping she might reach out when she was older. Julia was crying quietly beside me. "She told me you left because you didn't want a kid," she said. "She said you never paid child support or sent birthday cards." Mark shook his head sadly. "I never stopped trying, Julia. I never stopped loving you." It was a lot for Julia to process. After the call, she shut herself in her room for hours. When she finally came out, her eyes were puffy from crying, but she seemed stronger somehow. "I want to meet him," she said decisively. "In person." Mark drove down that weekend. The meeting was awkward at first. How could it not be? But watching them together, seeing the same mannerisms, the same way they both talked with their hands when excited, was remarkable. Mark brought photo albums of Julia's early years and his side of the family she'd never known about. Julia discovered she had 2 half-siblings, a stepmother named Karen, who was a high school art teacher, and grandparents who'd been keeping gifts for her birthday every year, hoping to give them to her someday. While they were getting to know each other, I stepped outside to give them privacy and found a notification on my phone. Claire had posted a photo of herself looking sad next to a picture of Julia as a toddler, with the caption, "Missing my baby girl who was manipulated into thinking I'm a bad mother. Now her father who abandoned us is pretending to care after 15 years of absence. Money changes people." I wanted to throw my phone across the yard. The audacity of her lies was unbelievable. But then Rob showed me something else. Claire's story was starting to unravel publicly. Former classmates of Claire and Mark were commenting on her post with their memories of what actually happened. Mark's sister had posted counter-evidence showing the child support payments and returned gifts. Claire's carefully constructed narrative was falling apart. The extended custody hearing finally arrived. Mark attended, not to seek custody himself, but to support Julia's desire to stay with us, while he gradually built a relationship with her. His testimony about Claire's parental alienation clearly impacted Judge Patel. Claire's attorney tried to paint Mark as an opportunistic absent father, but the evidence of his efforts to stay connected was overwhelming. The real bombshell came from an unexpected source. Claire's current boyfriend Taylor showed up to testify. Claire looked shocked to see him there. Clearly, she hadn't anticipated this. Taylor testified that Claire had confessed to him that she deliberately kept Julia from her father and had been using her daughter primarily for social media content about being a dedicated single mom. Claire completely lost it in the courtroom, screaming that Taylor was lying because she dumped him. Judge Patel had to threaten her with contempt of court again to restore order. When the dust settled, Judge Patel extended my guardianship of Julia for 6 months, with Claire limited to supervised visitation once a week. She also granted Mark visitation rights and ordered family therapy for all parties involved. Claire was required to complete parenting classes and individual therapy before the court would reconsider her custody position. Outside the courtroom, Claire stormed up to me, her face twisted with rage. "This isn't over," she hissed. "You've turned everyone against me, but I'll get my daughter back." Mark stepped between us. "Claire, that's enough. This isn't about you versus Sarah. It's about what Julia needs right now." Claire ignored him, focusing her fury on me. "You think you're so perfect. Such a great mother. I'll make sure everyone knows the truth about you." Taylor, who was still nearby, pulled Claire away before security needed to get involved. I was shaking as we left the courthouse, but Julia looked calmer than she had in weeks. She'd stood up to her mother in court, telling Judge Patel clearly that she didn't feel safe with Claire and wanted to stay with us. It had taken tremendous courage. Life settled into a new normal for a few weeks. Julia continued therapy twice weekly. She started visiting Mark and his family on occasional weekends, building a relationship gradually. She even returned to school part-time, with a modified schedule and support from the school counselor. Claire, meanwhile, attended exactly 1 parenting class before dropping out. She skipped her first 2 supervised visits with Julia, then showed up to the third one smelling of alcohol, causing the supervisor to end the visit early. She continued her social media campaign, but was getting less and less sympathy as more people learned the truth. I thought things were finally calming down until I got a call from the school one afternoon. Julia had received dozens of text messages from unknown numbers calling her horrible names and telling her to just finish the job right this time. Someone had distributed her phone number and encouraged this targeted harassment. The school counselor had found her having a panic attack in the bathroom. I rushed to pick her up, and we went straight to the police station to report the cyberbullying. The officer was sympathetic but not optimistic about tracing anonymous texts. He took screenshots of everything and filed a report, suggesting we change Julia's phone number immediately. That night, while Julia was finally sleeping with the help of anxiety medication Dr. Chen had prescribed, I sat in the kitchen with Rob trying to figure out our next steps. That's when Emma showed me something disturbing she'd found online. A fake profile of Julia had been created, supposedly confessing that she'd made up the S-side attempt for attention and saying horrible things about herself. "Mom, I think Aunt Claire made this," Emma said quietly. She'd started calling Claire Aunt Claire, instead of just Claire only recently, as if trying to create distance from someone she'd once loved. Look at these phrases: seeking attention and causing drama for no reason. That's exactly how she talks. She was right. It was Claire's language, Claire's accusations, just put into Julia's mouth. We reported the fake profile and got it taken down, but the damage was already spreading through Julia's social circles. The next day, Julia didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't push her. She'd been through enough. I called her therapist, who suggested an emergency session that afternoon. I was working from home to keep an eye on her when someone started pounding on our front door. It was Claire, looking disheveled and angry. I opened the door just enough to talk to her, keeping the security chain on. "Where is she? I know she's here. I want to see my daughter now," Claire demanded. "Claire, you know you only have supervised visitation. If you want to see Julia, you need to schedule it through family services." "That's bullshit and you know it. You've poisoned everyone against me. Julia, Mark, even Taylor. You've ruined my life." I tried to remain calm. "Claire, please leave. You're violating the court order by being here. I'm not going anywhere until I see Julia." She tried to push the door open, but the security chain held. "I'm calling the police," I warned her. "Go ahead. Call them. They can't keep a mother from her child forever." I closed the door and immediately dialed 911. Claire continued pounding and shouting. Upstairs, I could hear Julia crying. I texted Rob, who was at work, letting him know what was happening. The police arrived within minutes. Claire immediately switched to a tearful, vulnerable persona, claiming she was just a concerned mother trying to check on her daughter after hearing she wasn't in school. The officers, thankfully, had been briefed on our case and knew about the court orders in place. They firmly but politely escorted Claire off our property, warning her that she could be arrested if she returned. As they were leaving, Claire looked back at the house and shouted, "I'll never stop fighting for her. Never." The incident shook all of us. Julia was terrified that Claire would come back when the police weren't around. Emma was angry, saying she wished Claire would just disappear. Rob started talking about installing better security systems, maybe even moving to a different neighborhood. Dr. Chen suggested that Julia write a letter to Claire, not to send, but to express all her feelings that she'd been bottling up. Julia spent hours on it, filling pages with years of hurt, confusion, and anger. When she finally let me read it, I was struck by her insight and maturity. "I think I understand now," she wrote. "Mom never really wanted me for me. She wanted what I represented, the perfect daughter for her perfect mom image. When I started having my own problems and opinions, I didn't fit her story anymore. But I'm not a character in her story. I'm a real person." Reading those words broke my heart, but also filled me with pride for this incredible young woman. Despite everything, Julia was finding her voice and her strength. A week later, we got news that would change everything again. The police had traced the anonymous harassing text to a burner phone purchased at a convenience store near Claire's apartment. The store had security footage of Claire buying the phone. Additionally, Taylor had provided the police with messages where Claire discussed her plans to make Julia regret choosing Sarah over me and teach her a lesson about loyalty. Claire was arrested for cyberbullying, harassment, and violating the restraining order. She was released on bail the next day, but the damage to her case was irreparable. Her lawyer withdrew, and the court suspended even her supervised visitation pending criminal proceedings. The news spread quickly through our community. Former friends who had sided with Claire now reached out to apologize to us. Julia received supportive messages from classmates who had previously believed the rumors about her. The tide had turned completely. Mark invited Julia to spend a weekend with his family, a big step that she was finally ready for. Watching her pack her overnight bag with excited nervousness reminded me that despite all the trauma, she was still just a teenager with normal teenage emotions. I felt a pang of sadness, wondering if this was the beginning of her moving on from us, but I quickly pushed that thought aside. This was what healing looked like. The weekend with Mark went surprisingly well. Julia came home with stories about her half-siblings, aged 7 and 9, who apparently thought their big sister was the coolest person ever. She'd helped her stepmother Karen with an art project, and discovered they shared a love of photography. Mark had taken her hiking to his favorite spot overlooking the valley, something they discovered they both enjoyed. "It's weird," Julia told me as I helped her unpack. "Being there feels both totally new and somehow familiar at the same time. Like, Mark has some of the same habits I do. We both organize our books by color instead of author, and we both hate the crusts on sandwiches. Biology is pretty amazing that way," I said, folding her sweater. "How do you feel about everything?" Julia sat on her bed, thoughtful. "I'm still processing it all. I keep thinking about all the years I believed Mom's lies about him, all the birthdays and holidays we could have shared. It makes me angry but also sad. Like, what kind of mother keeps a kid from their dad who actually wants to be involved? I didn't have a good answer. Claire's behavior defied logical explanation. The next morning, I was making breakfast when Julia came downstairs looking troubled. She handed me her phone, showing me a text from an unknown number. Hope you enjoyed playing Happy Family with Mark. Don't forget who your real parent is. This isn't over. My stomach dropped. When did you get this? Late last night. I didn't want to worry you then. I immediately called Natalie, who advised us to report it to the police as another violation of the restraining order. The officer who took our report seemed frustrated that Claire was continuing to harass Julia despite her pending charges. We'll add this to her case file, he promised. In the meantime, I'd suggest Julia gets a new phone number again. 2 days later, we received notice that Claire had checked herself into a mental health facility, claiming emotional distress. Her criminal hearing was postponed, and her attorney, she'd hired a new one, filed a motion claiming she needed treatment, not punishment. I had mixed feelings about this development. Part of me wanted Claire to get the help she obviously needed. Another part suspected this was just another manipulation tactic to gain sympathy from the court. Either way, it gave us a temporary reprieve from her harassment. Julia used this calmer period to focus on school and building relationships with both her dad and her friends. Some days were better than others. She still had nightmares and anxiety attacks, but they were becoming less frequent. Dr. Chen noted significant progress in their sessions. Claire remained in the mental health facility for 3 weeks. Upon her release, she was diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder and prescribed medication and therapy. Her criminal case resulted in a plea deal, probation and mandatory mental health treatment, plus an extended restraining order preventing her from contacting Julia in any way for 1 year. The custody situation became more complicated. With Mark now actively involved, he petitioned for shared custody with us. Claire's attorney fought to maintain her parental rights despite her restricted access. Judge Patel ordered a comprehensive family evaluation to determine the best permanent arrangement for Julia. Through all this legal maneuvering, Julia remained with us, gradually spending more time with Mark and his family. Claire complied with her treatment plan superficially, but continued posting passive-aggressive content on social media about parental alienation and the system failing mothers. Julia's 16th birthday approached, her first without Claire, but with her newly discovered father and extended family. She wanted a small celebration, still wary of large gatherings after the cyberbullying incident. We planned a dinner with just our immediate family, Mark's family, and 2 of Julia's closest friends. The evening before her birthday, we were finishing decorations when the doorbell rang. Rob answered it and returned with a large package labeled, "For Julia, happy birthday from Mom." Julia stared at it warily. "I don't want to open it." "You don't have to," I assured her. "But what if it's something weird or scary? Shouldn't we know?" She had a point. Rob carefully opened the package while Julia, Emma, and I watched from a distance. Inside was a photo album and a letter. Rob checked that there was nothing harmful before handing it to Julia. The album contained baby photos of Julia that we'd never seen, her first steps, early birthdays, holidays. The letter was surprisingly civil, expressing regret for how things had turned out and asking Julia to remember the good times we had. It was signed, "Love always, Mom." Julia leafed through the album silently, her expression unreadable. Finally, she closed it and handed it to me. "Can you put this somewhere safe? I'm not ready to look at it right now, but I might want it someday." "Of course," I said, taking the album. "Whatever you need." Julia's birthday dinner the next day was a success. Mark and Karen brought thoughtful gifts, a professional camera she'd been wanting, and a handmade quilt with fabric from her grandparents' old clothes, creating a connection to the family history she'd missed. Emma gave her a friendship bracelet she'd made herself, with charms representing inside jokes only they understood. Rob and I gave her a letter officially inviting her to live with us for as long as she wanted, along with a key to our house on a special keychain. It wasn't the most exciting gift, but the symbolism meant everything to Julia. She hugged us both for a long time, whispering "thank you" over and over. As the custody evaluation continued, we settled into a routine. Julia split weekends between our home and Mark's, with special occasions shared between both families. Claire remained on the periphery, completing her court-ordered treatments and occasionally sending appropriate cards or messages through her attorney. 6 months after Julia's SSI attempt, the final custody hearing was scheduled. The evaluator recommended a unique arrangement. Primary physical custody would remain with us since Julia was settled in our home and doing well, with regular visitation with Mark and his family. Claire would be allowed monthly supervised visits once she completed her treatment program, with the possibility of expanded access after a year of demonstrated stability. In the courtroom, we braced for Claire's objections, but she surprised everyone by accepting the arrangement without argument. She looked different, calmer, less polished, more authentic somehow. When given the chance to address the court, she actually apologized. "I recognize that my behavior has hurt my daughter," she said, her voice steady. "I've been focusing on what I wanted, rather than what Julia needed. I'm committed to getting better so I can be the mother she deserves, even if that looks different than I imagined." Judge Patel seemed impressed by Claire's statement and approved the custody arrangement, with periodic court reviews to ensure everyone was adhering to the terms. Outside the courtroom, Claire approached us cautiously. Julia tensed beside me, and I put a protective arm around her shoulders. "Julia, I know you don't believe me right now, and I don't blame you," Claire said, "but I'm trying to change, really trying. I hope someday you'll give me another chance to be in your life." Julia nodded stiffly but didn't speak. Claire seemed to accept this, turning to leave without pushing for more. As we walked to our car, Julia was quiet. Finally, she said, "Do you think she meant it? About changing?" "I don't know," I answered honestly. "People can change if they really want to and put in the work, but it takes time to rebuild trust once it's broken." "I'm not ready to forgive her," Julia said firmly. "Maybe someday, but not now." "That's completely valid," I assured her. "You don't owe her forgiveness on any timeline but your own." That night, I found Julia sitting on our back porch swing, looking at the stars. I sat beside her, and we swung quietly for a few minutes. "Sarah," she said finally, "thank you for saving my life. Not just that night, but every day since." I wrapped my arm around her, my throat tight with emotion. You're the one who did the hard work, Jules. I'm just grateful I get to see the amazing person you're becoming. I used to think I didn't matter to anyone, she said softly. Now I know that's not true. As we sat there under the stars, I reflected on how differently things might have turned out if I hadn't found Julia that night, if I'd respected Claire's parental authority despite my concerns, if I'd backed down when faced with police and accusations. The thought was unbearable. Our journey was far from over. Julia still had a lot of healing to do. The relationship with her father was still new and developing. Claire remained an unpredictable factor in our lives, but for the first time in months, I felt genuine hope for Julia's future, and for all of us. The broken friendship with Claire would always be a painful chapter in my life. I mourned the loss of the person I thought she was, the years of shared memories and trust, but in its place, something stronger had formed, a chosen family built on genuine care rather than obligation or image. And watching Julia blossom in that environment made everything we'd been through worthwhile. The broken friendship ending. For the next couple of months, things were actually pretty stable. Julia was attending therapy regularly, and her therapist reported good progress. She'd even started going back to school full-time, though we'd arranged with the administration that she could call me to pick her up if things got overwhelming. Mark was proving to be an amazing dad, patient, thoughtful, and totally committed to building a relationship with Julia at her pace, but I should have known Claire wouldn't stay quiet for long. Right after winter break, Julia came home from school looking upset. Apparently, Claire had created a whole Mother's Rights Facebook group specifically about our situation. She'd recruited some moms from Julia's old neighborhood and was posting daily about being separated from her child by a manipulative friend. The worst part was she'd posted old photos of Julia without permission, including some from her hospital stay. How did she even get those? Julia asked, her hands shaking as she showed me her phone. I never gave her permission to share these. I called Natalie immediately, and she helped us file a complaint for violation of the restraining order and unauthorized use of Julia's images. But the damage was already spreading online. Some of Claire's followers had found Julia's social media and were sending her nasty messages about being ungrateful to her mother. We thought we'd have to fight this new battle, but something unexpected happened. One of the moms in Claire's group, a woman named Diane, reached out to me privately. She'd joined thinking she was supporting a wronged mother, but after seeing some inconsistencies in Claire's stories, she'd done some digging. I found the court records, Diane wrote, and they don't match what Claire's telling everyone. I confronted her about it, and she went ballistic, accusing me of betraying her. I think several people are starting to see through her act. Sure enough, within days, Claire's support group imploded. Several members posted public apologies to Julia after discovering they'd been manipulated. Claire took down the entire group and went suspiciously quiet online. Do you think she's finally giving up? Rob asked hopefully one night after the girls had gone to bed. I shook my head. I don't think Claire knows how to give up. She's just regrouping. I was right. 2 weeks later, Julia came to me with another concerning development. Sarah, she corrected herself, though secretly, my heart swelled a little whenever she accidentally called me Mom. Claire's been emailing my teachers. She showed me her school email, which included a forwarded message from her English teacher. Claire had contacted every one of Julia's teachers, claiming she was concerned about her daughter's academic performance and requesting regular updates on assignments and grades, despite the court order specifying all educational information should go through me or Mark. The school administration was amazing once I explained the situation. They sent out a staff-wide alert about Claire and reinforced their security protocols to prevent her from accessing Julia's records or the building itself. Claire's next move came during Julia's therapy session. Dr. Chen called me immediately afterward, sounding troubled. I wanted to let you know that Claire somehow obtained my professional email address and sent me a lengthy message containing what she claims is Julia's history of manipulation and attention-seeking behavior. It's highly inappropriate, and I've reported it to the court. Julia was devastated when she found out. She's trying to turn everyone against me, she whispered, hugging her knees to her chest. Even my therapist. But it's not working, I pointed out gently. Dr. Chen saw right through it. Everyone who matters knows the truth about you, Julia. That seemed to help, but I could see the toll this constant battle was taking on her, and on Emma too. My daughter had been Julia's rock through everything, but I noticed she was becoming anxious about her own reputation at school after Claire started suggesting online that Emma was a bad influence who encouraged Julia's rebellion. I found Emma crying in her room one night after seeing posts where some parents questioned whether their kids should hang out with those troubled girls from the Reynolds house. I sat on her bed and pulled her into a hug. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. This isn't fair to you. Emma wiped her eyes. I don't care what those stupid parents think. I just hate seeing Julia hurt over and over, and I'm scared about what Claire might do next. I was scared too, though I tried not to show it. I was also exhausted. Between work, legal issues, supporting both girls, and trying to maintain some semblance of a normal household, I was running on fumes. Rob was picking up tons of slack, but he was tired too. That's when Mark stepped up in a way I hadn't expected. He adjusted his work schedule to take Fridays off so he could help with school pickup and appointments. He started having Julia and Emma over on those afternoons, giving Rob and me a few hours to catch our breath each week. His wife Karen even dropped off homemade meals a couple times, saying simply, "We're family now. This is what family does." Just as I thought we might be finding a sustainable rhythm, the court scheduled a review of Claire's supervised visitation. There was a possibility they might expand her access if she'd complied with all requirements and shown improvement. 3 days before the review, Julia came to me in tears, showing me her phone. She'd received dozens of texts from unknown numbers with messages like lying bitch and attention whore, and everyone knows you're making this up. Some even contained threats. Maybe you should try killing yourself for real this time. I was horrified and immediately called the police. They took a report and said they'd try to trace the numbers, but admitted these harassment campaigns were often difficult to track. We got Julia a new phone number the same day, but the damage was already done. She had nightmares that night and could barely function the next day. At the visitation review hearing, we presented evidence of the harassment. The phone company had traced the text to a burner phone purchased at a convenience store near Claire's apartment. The store's security footage clearly showed Claire buying the phone, wearing a baseball cap but still easily identifiable. Claire's attorney tried to argue there was no definitive proof she'd sent the messages, but the judge wasn't buying it. Instead of expanding Claire's access, the judge maintained the supervised visitation schedule and ordered Claire to undergo a complete psychological evaluation before any changes would be considered. Outside the courtroom, Claire's attorney pulled me aside. "My client is experiencing financial hardship that's preventing her from attending all her mandated therapy sessions," he explained. "She's asked if you would consider reducing the child support you're receiving to offset those costs." I just stared at him. "I'm not receiving any child support. Claire hasn't paid a dime since Julia came to live with us." The attorney looked genuinely surprised. "But my client said she's been paying substantial support." "She lied to you," I said simply. "Check the court records." That evening, Julia seemed unusually quiet after her supervised visit with Claire. I found her sitting on her bed, staring at the wall. "Everything okay, sweetheart?" I asked, sitting beside her. Julia hesitated. She seemed different today, like really calm and nice. She brought some of my old books from when I was little and talked about normal stuff. "That sounds positive," I said cautiously. "Yeah, but..." Julia twisted her fingers together nervously. When the supervisor went to take a phone call, Mom leaned over and whispered that she knows I'll come to my senses soon and that I'd regret betraying her if I didn't. My heart sank. "Did you tell the supervisor?" Julia shook her head. Mom was smiling the whole time, like she was saying something sweet. It would have been my word against hers. I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Chen the next day. During the appointment, she suggested that Julia document specific instances of Claire's manipulation and threats for the court. "I know it's difficult," Dr. Chen told her, "but creating a clear record of these behaviors is important." Julia agreed but found the process incredibly triggering. Just writing down some of the things Claire had said and done over the years brought back nightmares and anxiety attacks. We created a system where she'd write for 20 minutes, then take a break with either Emma or me nearby for support. Even with these precautions, it was grueling work. What emerged from Julia's documentation was a pattern we hadn't fully understood before. Whenever Julia had shown independence or formed close friendships, Claire had found ways to sabotage them. She'd accidentally schedule family events when Julia had friend gatherings. She'd tell Julia that friends had said negative things about her behind her back. She'd even called the parents of Julia's friends to suggest their children might be negatively influenced by spending time together. Meanwhile, Claire's psychological evaluation was completed and submitted to the court. Her attorney immediately filed a motion to have it sealed, claiming it contained private medical information irrelevant to the case. We waited anxiously for 2 weeks before the judge ruled that portions relevant to parenting capacity would be disclosed. The unsealed sections were disturbing. The psychologist noted concerning narcissistic patterns and specifically recommended against unsupervised parenting time, stating that Claire viewed Julia as an extension of herself rather than a separate individual with legitimate needs and feelings of her own. Claire's response was to fire her attorney and claim the psychologist was biased against mothers. The court appointed a guardian ad litem, essentially an independent investigator focused solely on Julia's best interests, to assess the situation from all angles. Linda, the guardian ad litem, was thorough and fair. She interviewed everyone in both households, spoke with Julia's teachers and therapist, and reviewed all the documentation we'd gathered. During her home visit with Claire, she spent over 2 hours talking with her. "Claire was very different with Linda than she is with us," Julia said after her own interview with the guardian. "She was like super mom of the year, all concerned and warm and stuff." I tried not to worry that Linda might be fooled by Claire's performance, but it was hard. So much depended on her assessment. Then something unexpected happened. One of Claire's friends, a woman named Patricia, who'd initially been hostile toward me, reached out asking to meet for coffee. I was suspicious but agreed to meet in a public place. Patricia fidgeted with her coffee cup for several minutes before finally speaking. "Claire asked me to lie to the guardian," she blurted out. "She wanted me to say I'd witnessed all these perfect mother-daughter moments between her and Julia over the years, but I can't do it. Not anymore." She explained that Claire had coached her on exactly what to say, including specific events that Patricia had never actually witnessed. "I've been friends with Claire for years, and I always thought you were the bad guy in this story, but now I'm not so sure." Patricia provided a sworn statement about Claire's attempted witness tampering, which we immediately forwarded to Linda and the court. Even more surprising, a few days later, Mark received a call from Taylor, Claire's now ex-boyfriend. He'd ended their relationship after discovering the extent of Claire's manipulation and wanted to provide information he thought might help protect Julia. "I should have spoken up sooner," Taylor told Mark. "I saw warning signs but didn't want to believe it. Claire was obsessed with what she called winning against you guys, but she barely mentioned Julia's well-being. It was all about proving she was right." Taylor provided screenshots of disturbing messages where Claire discussed using Julia to maintain her Mother of the Year image on social media and complained about how much easier life would be without teenage drama. Linda's final report to the court was comprehensive and unflinching. She recommended Julia remain in my custody with continued therapeutic visitation with Claire. But the report contained something none of us had anticipated: concerns about Claire's financial exploitation of Julia through a fundraising account claiming to be for Julia's recovery and legal defense. The judge immediately froze the account and ordered a financial investigation. It revealed Claire had raised over $15,000 from sympathetic followers online, ostensibly for Julia's treatment and legal fees. Bank records showed the money had actually funded Claire's vacation, shopping sprees, and legal representation. The court ordered Claire to repay all fraudulently obtained funds and barred her from using Julia's name or image online for any purpose. When news of the financial exploitation spread through our community, public opinion finally shifted decisively in our favor. With her reputation crumbling, Claire made a show of recommitting to her court-ordered therapy and parenting classes. Her new therapist reported she was attending sessions but showed minimal engagement or insight. The court maintained all supervision requirements despite Claire's protests that she was doing everything asked of her. As Julia's 17th birthday approached, we wanted to make it special. She'd made remarkable progress in therapy and had even joined an art group for teens dealing with trauma. 2 weeks before her birthday, Claire filed an emergency motion demanding to be included in any celebration as her maternal right. The judge not only denied Claire's motion but reprimanded her attorney for abusing emergency proceedings. Still, Julia worried Claire might show up anyway and ruin the day, so Mark suggested hosting the celebration at his house in the neighboring state. The party was perfect, just friends and family, good food, and no drama. Julia seemed genuinely happy, laughing with Emma and her half-siblings, showing Karen her latest art project, and looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in over a year. When we returned home that evening, we found dozens of boxes stacked on my front porch, all labeled Julia's childhood. Inside was mostly junk, broken toys, stained clothes, even some trash. Clearly Claire's attempt to insert herself into the day, even from a distance. Classic mom, Julia said, sighing as we sorted through the mess. Always has to remind everyone she exists. As the school year progressed, Julia started talking about college. She wanted to visit some art schools on the East Coast, which would require adjusting the custody agreement for out-of-state travel. We filed the appropriate motions months in advance, anticipating Claire's opposition. Sure enough, Claire fought the college visit request, claiming Julia was too emotionally fragile to travel far from home. The guardian ad litem strongly disagreed, noting Julia's excellent academic recovery and emotional growth. The judge not only approved the college visits but praised Julia's resilience in court, making her blush with pride. During their third college visit, Julia received multiple calls from an unknown number, which she ignored following our safety protocols. That night, she got a text with a photo of Claire standing outside the campus building they'd toured that day, clearly showing she'd followed them across state lines. We immediately contacted campus security and cut the visit short. The incident crossed a clear legal line, resulting in formal stalking charges against Claire. As the court date approached, her attorney proposed a comprehensive settlement on all outstanding issues. The offer seemed suspiciously reasonable at first glance. Claire would drop all custody claims in exchange for structured visitation, and Julia maintaining her mother's health insurance into college. But something felt off, so we requested a mediation session, rather than simply signing the agreement. In mediation, Claire initially appeared cooperative, even apologizing for any misunderstandings. But when discussion turned to Julia's college choices, her true motivation emerged. She insisted Julia attend her alma mater where Claire had connections, essentially trying to control Julia's college experience and regain access to her life. When we rejected that demand, Claire's facade crumbled completely. She accused Julia of being manipulated and ungrateful, her voice rising with each word until the mediator had to end the session. The mediator later recommended the court be informed of Claire's continuing control issues. Following the failed mediation, Claire escalated her online campaign again. But this time, her mother's rights group quickly imploded, as members realized they were being manipulated when Claire's documented actions didn't match her victim narrative. The criminal stalking case proceeded with solid evidence from the college incident. 2 days before the hearing, Claire checked herself into a mental health facility, resulting in a postponement of the proceedings. After a 3-week hospital stay, Claire emerged with a bipolar disorder diagnosis that she immediately tried to use as justification for all her actions. But the treating psychiatrist's report noted that mental health issues didn't explain the calculated nature of many of her behaviors. As Julia's 18th birthday approached, we were all aware of its significance. Once she turned 18, many court-mandated restrictions would naturally expire. Claire sent a certified letter announcing she would appear at our house at midnight when Julia legally became an adult and could make her own choices without interference. We obtained an extended restraining order based on the continuing pattern of harassment and Julia's legitimate fear for her safety. But at 12:01 a.m. on Julia's birthday, Claire pulled up outside our house anyway, honking and shouting that she had a right to see her adult daughter. I called the police while Mark, who'd come over for backup just in case, stood at the door ensuring Claire couldn't enter. When officers arrived, Claire actually handed them a document she claimed was a court order granting her access. The officers quickly identified it as fraudulent and warned her about potential criminal charges for creating false legal documents. The fake court document incident resulted in formal charges. Rather than another lengthy court battle, the prosecutor offered a plea deal including mandatory psychiatric treatment and a 5-year restraining order. At the hearing, Julia delivered a powerful victim impact statement that left everyone in the courtroom emotional. "My mother has always seen me as an extension of herself, not as my own person," she said in a clear, steady voice. "When I didn't reflect the image she wanted, she tried to break me rather than accept me. But I hope someday she gets the help she needs, not just for my sake, but for hers." The judge commended Julia's maturity while accepting the plea deal with additional monitoring requirements. With legal matters finally concluded, Julia focused on her future. She applied to several art schools, struggling a bit with essay questions about family and challenges, but ultimately crafting honest responses that showcased her resilience. College acceptance letters started arriving in spring, with Julia receiving scholarships to 3 schools, including her top choice. The excitement was briefly tempered when we learned Claire had contacted the admissions office claiming Julia's applications contained fraudulent information, but the school quickly dismissed these allegations after we provided documentation. Julia chose a school 4 hours away, close enough to visit regularly, but far enough to feel independent. During orientation, she connected with the school's counseling center and student support services, establishing safety nets before classes even began. 2 weeks before move-in day, Claire sent a seemingly heartfelt letter apologizing and asking to meet just once before Julia left for college. But the letter contained subtle manipulations we'd learned to recognize, and Julia declined the meeting while acknowledging the apology. On moving day, as we packed the car with Julia's belongings, we spotted Claire's car parked down the street. Mark drove ahead to ensure she didn't follow us to campus, while I stayed with Julia, refusing to let Claire taint this milestone. After getting Julia settled in her dorm room, I found it hard to say goodbye. This wasn't how I'd imagined sending a child to college. All the complicated emotions of a normal send-off, plus the extra layer of protectiveness I felt toward this girl who'd become like my own daughter. "I'm going to be okay," Julia assured me, recognizing my hesitation. "I know what healthy relationships look like now, thanks to you and Rob and Mark and Karen. And you'll call if you need anything? Anything at all? I promise," she said, hugging me tight. "You're my family. That doesn't change because I'm in college." During her first month at school, Julia discovered Claire had somehow found her address and sent a package of childhood items. Campus security implemented mail screening and provided extra monitoring of her residence hall. But Julia handled the situation with remarkable composure. By Thanksgiving, when Julia returned home for the break, she seemed more confident and independent. She was thriving academically and had made several friends, including her roommate Casey, who came home with her for the holiday. An unexpected card arrived from Claire with news she'd moved to another state and was finally finding peace. Now, 2 years later, Julia is flourishing in college with a 3.8 GPA and a fantastic group of friends. She still sees a therapist occasionally, but mostly to process normal college stresses rather than trauma. She spends breaks and holidays alternating between our house and Mark's, with Emma visiting her at school whenever possible. She still receives occasional messages from Claire, who seems to have finally accepted the boundaries Julia has set. The messages are more respectful now, though they always contain hints of what their relationship could be. Julia maintains minimal contact on her own terms, not out of obligation, but as part of her own healing journey. Last week, Julia called with exciting news. Her artwork had been selected for a prestigious student exhibition. "They want me to bring family to the opening," she said. "So I need you, Rob, Emma, Dad, Karen, and the kids there. You're all my family. We wouldn't miss it for anything," I promised. The broken friendship with Claire will always be part of our story. The pain of losing someone I'd once considered a sister runs deep, and I sometimes still catch myself missing the person I thought she was. But what we've gained in return, this chosen family built around Julia's well-being, is more meaningful than I could have imagined. I watch Julia now, confident and thriving, pursuing her dreams without fear. I see Emma, whose unwavering loyalty to her friend taught her more about courage than any lesson could. I see Mark and his family, who opened their hearts to the daughter they'd been separated from. And I know that while blood might determine biology, true family is built through love, respect, and being there when it matters most.